Billy Loomis. Billy Loomis is the original Ghostface with serious abandonment issues that turned him into a homicidal maniac. This guy couldn't handle his parents' divorce, so he decided to take it out on Sydney because her mom had an affair with his dad. Billy's whole twisted plan revolves around making Sydney suffer for something she didn't even know about, which is peak psycho boyfriend behavior. He spends the entire movie manipulating Sydney while secretly orchestrating murders, playing the caring boyfriend while plotting her destruction. Billy's death is absolutely brutal and well-deserved. After Sydney shoots him the first time, he goes down hard, blood pooling beneath him on the kitchen floor. She thinks he's finally done, walks away to check on her friends, classic horror movie mistake. But Billy's got one last surprise attack left in him. He comes charging at Sydney like a rabid animal, screaming about movies and how they made him do it. Sydney's ready this time though. She doesn't hesitate, doesn't give him a chance to monologue, just pulls the trigger. The gunshot echoes through the house as the bullet hits Billy square in the forehead. His head snaps back violently from the impact and he drops like a sack of bricks, eyes going blank instantly. All that psycho rage just disappears in one perfect shot. Stu Macher. Stu's just Billy's dumb sidekick who went along with a murder spree for no real reason beyond peer pressure taken to homicidal extremes. This guy doesn't even have a proper motive. He's just along for the ride because Billy told him it would be cool. Stu thinks being Ghostface is some kind of fun party game instead of multiple murder, giggling and making jokes while planning to kill his friends like he's organizing a twisted sleepover. Stu's death is like watching someone get killed by their own stupidity and love of technology. After getting stabbed and beaten up during the final fight, he's stumbling around the kitchen like a drunk person at a party, blood pouring from multiple wounds. Gail sees her opportunity and drops a heavy CRT television right on top of Stu's head. We're talking about one of those old school TVs that weighs like 50 pounds. The thing comes crashing down and completely crushes his skull with this sickening crunch sound, but it gets even better. The TV's still plugged in, so when it hits Stu, he gets electrocuted simultaneously. Sparks are flying everywhere, his body's convulsing from the electrical current, and you can literally smell burning flesh. The combination of blunt force trauma and high voltage makes sure there's no coming back. Mickey Altieri. Mickey's a pretentious film student who thinks he's making some kind of artistic statement about violence in media. His grand plan is to become famous by getting caught as Ghostface and then blaming movies for his actions in court. Like, he's going to start some national conversation about horror films. Throughout the movie, Mickey drops these pseudo-intellectual comments about horror films and violence. Like he's teaching a college course instead of stabbing people. The guy's got a serious case of main character syndrome. Mickey's death is particularly frustrating because this guy just absolutely refuses to shut up and die quietly. Sydney and Gail corner him in the theater, and instead of going down with dignity, Mickey decides this is the perfect time for a film theory lecture. They start shooting, multiple gunshots hitting him in the chest and stomach, blood spraying everywhere like a horror movie special effect. But Mickey's still talking about his brilliant plan to blame horror movies for his actions, monologuing while literally bleeding out. Every time they think he's finally down, Mickey gets back up to explain another part of his supposedly genius scheme. It's like watching someone give a dissertation defense while dying. Finally, after what feels like forever, he collapses against a movie screen, choking on his own blood, his pretentious speech finally cut off mid-sentence. Mrs. Loomis spent 2 entire years planning her revenge scheme for her psycho son Billy. She got plastic surgery, changed her identity to Debbie Salt, and infiltrated Sydney's life just for payback. Talk about dedication to a cause. She's the ultimate helicopter parent taken to murderous extremes, convinced that Billy was some kind of misunderstood victim instead of a serial killer who murdered teenagers for fun. Mrs. Loomis's death is surprisingly quick and efficient, which almost seems too merciful for someone who caused so much pain and suffering. After her big villain reveal and speech about avenging her precious Billy, Sydney doesn't waste time with dramatic confrontations or lengthy fights. One clean gunshot to the head, right between the eyes with surgical precision. The bullet enters her forehead with a small, neat hole, but the exit wound is absolutely massive. Brain matter and blood spray across the wall behind her like abstract art as Mrs. Loomis drops instantly to the ground. All that planning, scheming, plastic surgery, and elaborate revenge plots ended by a single trigger pull. Her face still has that smug, satisfied expression from her reveal, but her eyes go completely blank as she hits the floor with a heavy thud. If you're still watching, make sure to subscribe and leave a like on this video. Roman Bridger. Roman's Sydney's half-brother who orchestrated the original Woodsboro murders because he was abandoned as a baby and given up for adoption. He manipulated Billy Loomis into becoming the first Ghostface killer and works completely alone, making him arguably the most skilled and dangerous killer in the entire franchise. Roman's elaborate plan involves systematically destroying Sydney's life piece by piece, killing everyone she cares about before revealing their twisted family connection. Roman's death is basically a marathon of violence because this guy absolutely refuses to stay down no matter how much damage he takes. Sydney starts by stabbing him in the chest with a knife, deep, brutal thrust that should be fatal to any normal person. But Roman just looks at her and smiles like it's a minor inconvenience. She stabs him again, this time in the stomach, then the shoulder, then the leg. We're talking about 5 or 6 separate stab wounds, each one spurting blood and causing what should be massive internal damage. Roman staggering around the set like a zombie, leaving a bloody trail everywhere he goes but somehow still functioning. Finally, Sydney grabs a gun and puts 3 bullets in him, one in the chest, one in the stomach, and one right in the face that completely blows out the back of his skull, painting the wall with brain matter. Even then, this psycho tries to pull one last fake death scare, grabbing at Sydney's ankle as she walks away. Charlie Walker. Charlie's a horror movie nerd who's completely obsessed with the stab movies and thinks he understands the franchise rules better than anyone else on the planet. He's basically a grown-up version of every annoying film student who thinks they're the next Wes Craven, constantly dropping knowledge about horror tropes and remake conventions. Charlie spends the entire movie referencing horror movie rules while committing actual murders, but completely misses the most important rule of all: don't trust your psycho partner. Charlie's death is absolutely perfect poetic justice served by someone he trusted completely with his life. After helping Jill execute her elaborate plan to become the new Sidney Prescott, Charlie thinks they're going to run away together and become famous as the surviving Ghostface killers. He's grinning like an idiot, probably already thinking about book deals and movie rights. Jill walks up to him with a sweet smile, acting all grateful for his help and dedication. Then she drives a hunting knife straight through his heart without warning. The blade goes in clean and deep, piercing his heart and coming out his back in one smooth motion. Charlie's face goes from pure happiness to shock to pain in about 2 seconds flat. He looks down at the knife handle sticking out of his chest, then back at Jill with this expression of complete and utter betrayal. Blood starts pouring from his mouth as his heart stops pumping properly, and he collapses to his knees before falling face first onto the ground. Jill Roberts. Jill Sydney's cousin who desperately wants to replace her as the famous final girl survivor and cash in on all the fame and attention. She's willing to murder her own family members and childhood friends just to become a celebrity victim, which is honestly more terrifying than any supernatural killer. Jill represents everything wrong with social media culture and the modern obsession with becoming famous for any reason, even surviving tragedy. Jill's death happens in the hospital, and it's incredibly satisfying to watch after everything she's put everyone through. Sydney grabs medical defibrillator paddles and presses the charged equipment against Jill's chest. The electrical current sends massive voltage through her entire body, causing her to convulse violently as her muscles contract involuntarily. You can see smoke rising from where the paddles make contact with her skin. But the real finishing move comes when Sydney slams Jill's head against the defibrillator machine with brutal force. The impact is absolutely devastating, skull meeting metal with this sickening crack sound that echoes through the hospital room. You can actually hear her skull fracturing on impact as blood immediately starts pooling around her head. Brain matter begins leaking from the crack in her skull, and her neck snaps at an unnatural angle. Her eyes roll back, showing only the whites, and her body goes completely limp like a broken doll. Richie Kirsch. Richie's a toxic fan who genuinely believes he owns the Stab franchise just because he's seen all the movies multiple times. He's upset that the recent sequels haven't lived up to his impossibly high standards, so he decides to create some real source material through actual murder to fix what he sees as a broken franchise. Richie represents the absolute worst kind of horror fan, the gatekeeping purist who thinks his opinion is the only one that matters and is willing to kill people over movie quality. Richie's death is deeply personal and vicious because Sam makes it personal after learning about his manipulation and lies. Sam doesn't just kill him, she completely destroys him with methodical precision. She starts by stabbing him in the stomach with a kitchen knife, twisting the blade to cause maximum internal damage and pain. The first stab makes Richie double over in agony, blood immediately soaking through his shirt and dripping onto the floor. But Sam's nowhere near done with him. She pulls the knife out and stabs him again, this time higher up, probably puncturing a lung. Each subsequent stab wound is accompanied by Sam calling out his toxic behavior and manipulation. By the time she's finished with him, Richie has 7 or 8 stab wounds scattered across his torso, bleeding from multiple holes, struggling to breathe because his lungs are filling with blood. The final stab goes directly through his heart, and you can literally see the life drain from his eyes as he realizes his perfect plan has completely backfired. Amber Freeman. Amber's completely obsessed with social media and treats being Ghostface like it's some kind of viral challenge or internet trend. She's utterly lacking in empathy and genuinely thinks murder is just another way to get attention online and build her personal brand. Amber can effortlessly switch between posting cute selfies and planning brutal murders without any emotional connection to the reality of what she's doing. Amber's death is absolutely spectacular and perfectly fitting for someone obsessed with going viral and getting attention. It starts when she gets completely doused in hand sanitizer during the chaotic final fight, the alcohol-based liquid soaking her clothes and hair thoroughly. Then Sydney throws a lit candle directly at her without hesitation. The sanitizer ignites instantly like gasoline, turning Amber into a living human torch. The flames engulf her entire body within seconds, and she starts screaming and running around like a burning mannequin. The fire spreads so quickly that her hair burns off completely, and her skin starts blistering and peeling in real time. You can actually smell the burning flesh and hair, which is absolutely nauseating. Just when it looks like she might somehow survive being burned alive, Gale shoots her center mass with perfect aim. The gunshot hits her while she's still completely on fire, and the impact knocks her backwards into even more flames. Amber's final moments are spent burning and bleeding simultaneously, creating exactly the kind of viral spectacle she always wanted. Wayne Bailey. Bailey's a corrupt detective who completely abuses his badge and position to orchestrate an elaborate revenge scheme against Sam for killing his son Richie in the previous movie. He's the worst kind of authority figure, using his access to crime scenes, evidence, and police resources to stay above suspicion while planning multiple murders. Bailey represents everything wrong with law enforcement corruption taken to absolutely homicidal extremes. Bailey's death is particularly brutal because it comes directly from his own daughter, the very person he recruited for his twisted revenge plot. After his big villain reveal where he explains his master plan, Quinn suddenly realizes that her father has systematically destroyed their entire family for the sake of revenge. She grabs a kitchen knife and drives it straight through his back without warning, the blade penetrating between his ribs and puncturing his heart from behind. Bailey's face shows complete and utter shock, not just from the physical pain, but from the emotional betrayal of his own child turning against him. Blood starts pouring from his mouth as his heart stops pumping effectively throughout his body. Then Sam finishes him off with her own knife, stabbing him directly in the chest while Quinn's blade is still embedded in his back. Now, he's got 2 knives piercing vital organs simultaneously, and blood is flowing freely from multiple wounds. Bailey drops to his knees, then forward onto his face, driving both knives even deeper into his body as he hits the ground. Quinn Bailey. Quinn's only involved in this whole murder conspiracy because Daddy Dearest specifically recruited her for his elaborate revenge scheme against the Carpenter sisters. She's been living directly with her intended victims while secretly planning their deaths, maintaining an incredibly elaborate cover story as just a normal college student. Quinn seems to genuinely enjoy the deception and manipulation almost as much as she enjoys the actual violence. Quinn's death happens during the absolutely chaotic final battle, and it's significantly messier than most of the other deaths in the franchise. She gets completely overpowered during a brutal fight with both Tara and Sam, and the sisters definitely don't hold back just because she's a woman. Sam grabs Quinn by the throat and slams her head against a brick wall with tremendous force. The impact cracks her skull immediately, and blood starts trickling from her ears, a clear sign of serious brain trauma and internal bleeding, but Quinn's still fighting back aggressively, so Tara joins the attack. They both start stabbing her simultaneously from different angles. Tara with a kitchen knife directly to the stomach, Sam with broken glass aimed at her neck. The neck wound is particularly devastating because it hits Quinn's carotid artery perfectly. Blood sprays everywhere in arterial spurts as her blood pressure drops rapidly, making her weak and completely disoriented. Quinn collapses against the wall, sliding down slowly and leaving a thick trail of blood behind her. She presses both hands against her neck desperately, trying to stop the bleeding, but there is simply too much damage to the major blood vessel. Ethan Landry. Ethan's a shy, awkward member of the Bailey family murder conspiracy who's been successfully pretending to be a completely harmless college nerd while secretly helping to murder innocent people, all because daddy asked him to join the family business. Ethan's entire persona is carefully built around being the least threatening person in any room, which makes his eventual Ghostface reveal deeply disturbing and unsettling. Ethan's death is absolutely perfect poetic justice at its finest and most satisfying. During the intense final confrontation, Chad manages to grab him and forces his mouth open against his will. Then he drives a sharp knife straight through Ethan's mouth, the blade entering behind his teeth and coming out through the back of his skull in one smooth motion. The knife goes in at an upward angle, probably piercing his brainstem, which explains why Ethan dies so quickly without much struggle. Blood immediately starts pouring from his mouth, mixing with saliva and making these horrible, wet, gurgling sounds. What makes this death so incredibly satisfying is the perfect symbolism. Ethan spent the entire movie lying through his teeth to everyone around him, and now he's literally got a knife piercing straight through his mouth. The blade has effectively severed his tongue and destroyed his ability to speak any more lies or deceptions. Ethan's eyes go wide with shock and intense pain, but he can't even scream because the knife is completely blocking his airway. The tip of the knife emerges from the back of his head, covered in blood and brain matter as his body goes completely limp and he finally stops lying forever. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop your ideas in the comments below.